This week's video was supposed to be another peaceful sketching trip, but that nearly didn't happen. I'll tell you why later in the video. But first I want to share a simple proportions tip that several people have asked about. When I'm out sketching and I've got a blank page in front of me, one of the hardest parts that I find is just deciding how to start, where to place the first few lines, and how to approach the building or the scene. Once I'm underway, things usually begin to fall into place. But those early decisions can really influence how the whole sketch turns out. Quite often we're encouraged to start with the big shapes, and that can be a really solid approach, and I use it myself, but it's not the only way to begin. And in this video I want to share an alternative method that I sometimes find helpful, especially when judging the overall proportions feels a bit tricky. So this is a house I spotted while sketching a while back, and at first glance it looks like it might suit a big shape approach. I appreciate this isn't the world's most exciting house to sketch, but I'm just using it as an example to demonstrate this method. So it's made up of some simple geometric shapes, a triangle and lots of rectangles basically. And if a building's fairly symmetrical, like this mock-up I've made of what it might look like if it was, as in if the apex of the roof was central and the windows were central, then starting with the big shapes can work really well. You could get the proportions of the main rectangle, so using your fingers, get the ratio of the height to width, and then we can draw two diagonal lines from the corners of that rectangle, and that gives us the middle. And then we can draw a line upwards from that point and work out where the apex of the roof is. Then we can use other little tips and tricks, like imagining the hands on a clock face to help visualise the angle of the roof, looking at negative space, so in other words, not looking at the window itself, but looking at the wall around the window to help you judge the proportions better and the distance from other windows. And this can help you then fill in all the rest of the details. But this building obviously is not symmetrical. And in cases like this, deciding how wide the building should be or exactly where that apex needs to be, because it's obviously not in the centre, can be a bit tricky. And if you get that wrong early on, then it's obviously going to throw off the whole sketch. So instead of starting big, sometimes I do the opposite and choose to start small. I'll pick something that feels easier to judge accurately. So here, for example, I use the lettering on the sign of the Spa Pavilion. Once I'd drawn that in, it helped me place the features around it. Whereas if I'd drawn the wall behind it first and say I misjudged it and got it too small, I obviously wouldn't have been able to fit all the letters in. Here in Lavenham, I used the windows to help me judge the width of the building. And that's what I'm going to do with this house. I think here, because of the irregular shape of the house, I'd find it easier to judge the proportions of something small, like the window, and use that as a kind of unit of measure for the rest of the drawing. Now, this approach definitely has its own drawbacks. If that first window ends up too big, you're obviously going to run out of space and fall off the page. So it won't suit everyone or every situation, but I think it's definitely worth a try when things are a little bit tricky. Now obviously I am doing this from a photograph in my studio, but these are exactly the same techniques as I could use if I was out on location. So what I'm going to pick to use as my unit of measure is one of those little windows, because I think I can probably judge that pretty well. I'm keeping in mind the height of it, and roughly measuring with my fingers, it looks like the bottom and middle thirds of this house are about the same height. So I draw my first rectangle, and once I've made my first marks on the page, I find it psychologically helps. I've overcome that barrier of starting. And now I've got something that I can compare everything else with. So we can see we've got 3 of those panes in a row with a little bit of window frame in between. So we can quickly draw those in at the same size. This is not intended to be the world's best drawing, it's just showing you the method. And in terms of height, it looks like the wall below the window is roughly the same height as the windows. So let's just use our fingers to measure and put a little dot, and that's where the bottom of the house is going to be. Next to here, we've then got a door. The window of the door is the same width as our original windows, it's just got a slightly wider frame. So I'll leave a little bit more of a gap, and then I'll just draw another bank of 3 window panes, same as the first. We can either just draw those 3 individually, or we can use our fingers to measure the whole section and again put a little dot where the corner's going to be. So whenever I'm working out where things should be placed, I'm often comparing them with the objects around them. I'm just working my way along using that first window pane as a measuring stick. Once the ground floor's done, like I said earlier, the height of the first floor, or second floor if you're American, it's the same as the floor we've just drawn, so we can measure that again with our fingers. And if you look at the windows above the front door is central to that set of three. So again, I'm always looking at things in relation to each other, how they line up. Now let's look at this side of the roof here, and it looks like it comes about halfway up this window. So that's where our roof's going to begin, but where's it going to end? So measuring with my fingers, I can see that the apex is roughly twice the height of the windows. And it looks like it's more or less in line with the edge of this window here. So now I've put those dots in, let's just hold a ruler up against that angle and see if it looks right. Does the negative space look right? Well, yes, I think if you look at where the corner of that window and where it is in relation to the roof line, that looks about right to me. So we can draw that in. And then this side, this comes out a bit more. Bit of a wobbly roof there, but you get the idea. So our proportions now look pretty good, and you can now start filling in all the rest of your details. So let me know in the comments if it's something you think you'd use, or do use, or if you would rather just go straight in with the big shapes, or how you do it. So if you were here for the proportion sketching tip, I really do hope that's been helpful, and thanks very much for watching. If you want to know what happened to the plein air trip, well, the alternator sheared off my engine and I was left with no steering. Thankfully, a wonderful mechanic came out and I eventually made it to my campsite, albeit a bit late. I did have time for a couple of very simple sketches. And if you're interested in the kit I'm using, I'm hopefully going to be back out and about next week, and I'll tell you more about it when I put it through its paces. As always, thank you very much for watching and happy sketching.